What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Raw and Unscripted Show with yours truly, Christopher Rausch, the place where I help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are live 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. Every single week, we have a live video cast. Of course, we're coming to you on the audio podcast, wherever podcasts are sold. So if you're watching the video cast, please take us with you on the audio podcast. We have 261 shows that you can choose from. Actually, 260 shows, if you want to be honest, because today is 261. We've been doing the show for 5 years, and we've had some pretty phenomenal guests on here who have talked about transformation, who have talked about being at their lowest of lows and being able to reframe their perspective about their life and be able to truly become triumphant. And that's going to be one of the situations tonight. I encourage you to get out pen and paper, take out your favorite note-taking device. And here's what I want you to do. I want you, by the end of this 45-minute conversation, I want you to have 3 strategies that you can start implementing this week, because what we're going to be talking about are things that you can do. You can take responsibility for your actions. You could start taking imperfect action, and you can surround yourself with the right people. There are 3 tips right now just to get you started, just to get you fired up, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you have been asking me about this, my book, a book about my life. It's Just You and Me, Kid, a story of a mother and son survival on the streets of Southern California. Yes, it was supposed to be out last year. Some people just messaged me recently and said, Chris, you said your book was going to be out. So I just thought I would use this opportunity to give you guys all an update. Yes, it was supposed to come out last year. Unfortunately, I had a situation with one of the publishers that I was working with, and now I'm shopping it around again, looking for the right editor and looking for the right publisher to get this thing out, but it will be out this year. So if you are interested in checking out my life story and helping me make it a bestseller and getting some really cool gifts out of it, go to itsjustyoumandmekid.com. It's just youandmekid.com. I guess to go for you guys who like to see stuff on the screen. There it is. It's Just You and Me, Kid. Go there, put your name and your email. That's all you have to do. And then when the book comes out, I'm going to be sending an email blast to you people only who are going to get an opportunity to hear stories that have been eliminated from the book due to the size. You're going to get to ask me questions. There's going to be all sorts of other bonuses. When you go check out that website, you'll see a list of what it is that you're going to get. And if there's something that you want that you don't see, let me know what it is, because I'm here to serve you. I'm here to share this book, my life of how I was a 7th grade homeless dropout who lived in the streets and ultimately created the amazing life that I have now. There's the shortest version I probably ever told. So go to itsjustyoumandmekid.com, check it out, and let's get started with the show. I've had an opportunity to meet this amazing individual. I think it was last year. We were part of a panel, and I heard her story. And immediately after the show was over, I said, I have to get you on the Raw and Unscripted show, because her story is going to inspire you. Her story is going to break your heart. But ultimately, it's all about how we can personally take responsibility. That R word, right? So many people tell me about the F word and the S word, which I don't give a shit about. I think it's fucking awesome. But the R word, so many people have a problem with, which is responsibility. You know, things happen to us, things are going to happen in our lives, but it's up to us to take that responsibility to find the deeper meaning, the deeper mission in some of those lessons, because I believe, and you guys know this, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Remember, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. You know how I know that? Because for those of you watching on the video cast, you can see it. It is written right on my arm. What doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. And the newest one is on my left arm. And that one says, you are only limited by the parameters of your own mind. You are only limited by the parameters of your own mind. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show, Brenda Adelman. Brenda, what's going on? Welcome, my dear.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad we made this happen.
Yes, we did. We're making it happen tonight. My first question for you, first of all, is how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am doing well in this crazy fakakta world. I'm doing well. I feel good. I feel I'm in a loving relationship. I'm really doing the work that's, my mission. So I feel good.
You feel good. Okay. So my first question for you, given what this show is about, given what you heard me say here in the opening, what do you want to get across most to people listening and watching tonight? What do you want them to walk away knowing in their heart of hearts about themselves, their lives, their opportunities, anything?
I believe that I want people to know that they can forgive anything, and that forgiveness is for them, not for anybody else. And that whenever we put out bad vibes and we're, vengeful or blame someone else, we're really weakening who we are.
And I wanted you to share that, because the next question for you is going to probably blow some people's minds, but you wrote a book. And I would love for you to tell everybody what the title of that book is. And let's kind of dive into that, because that is some resiliency shit right there.
Yes. So the name of the book says it all. My father killed my mother and married my aunt, forgiving the unforgivable.
Forgiving the unforgivable. My father killed my mother. In case you guys didn't just hear that, my father killed my mother and married my aunt, forgiving the unforgivable. And you started off with saying, what do you want to get across most tonight about that forgiveness? So tell us that story, please.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to give you the 90-second pitch, because I've been telling this story so long, and it just cuts the heart of it. And then, of course, there's so much more. But I grew up in Brooklyn with a Jewish wannabe Italian father who taught me how to drive a Cadillac when I was 6 and how to shoot a gun when I was 10. A bohemian artist mom who took me traveling with her all over the world and read Shakespeare to me from the time I was 3 years old as a bedtime story. Big characters, big laughs, and really big love. And then in 1995, my father, who I adored, I was still daddy's little girl, even though I was an adult, shot and killed my mother, shot her in the head and killed her. And then within a month, moved in with my aunt, my mother's sister. And so, in a nutshell, what actually gave me solace, because I felt so alone in this pain and this loss and this betrayal, was that my mother read me Shakespeare. And I knew that a character in history, Hamlet, had lived through something similar, because nobody who had lived through something like I did was talking about it. And in Hamlet, his father is killed by his uncle, and his uncle marries his mother. But in Hamlet, everybody dies, and it's about revenge. And I didn't want my life to end like that. And so that's why I was able to, thankfully, be able to turn it around through the power of forgiveness.
We're going to dive deep into that. One of my questions for you is, I didn't see this in any of the research. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a half brother, and it was my father who killed our mother. And he's my older brother. And never was it more clear that we were half brother and sister, although we were raised as we were completely, brother and sister, because, he immediately wanted to take my dad to court and throw the book at him and everything else. And I was so torn. It was like, emotionally, I could not handle losing my mother and father on the same night. And so I chose, for a portion of the time afterwards, to believe my father's lies, and him saying he couldn't remember who pulled the trigger and all this other stuff, even though there were 8 hours before the police were called, and there was a cleanup with the gun and a lot of other things. There were mob involvement with cleanup. So to make a long story short, my brother and I actually didn't speak for about 6 years after. So I lost my mother, my father, and my brother. And then in 1999 or something like that, 2000, I made the decision to take my dad to court for wrongful death, after a very interesting story too, but I'll say that in a second. But when I did do that, my brother had already so my father went to jail for 2.5 years on a plea bargain, because his gun, the murder weapon, the one I learned to shoot on, was never found. That was a cleanup. So he went to jail on a plea bargain, involuntary manslaughter. He got out in 2.5 years. And then it was a couple of years after that I made the decision to take him to court for wrongful death. And when I did that, I was also in a master's program in spiritual psychology. And I made the decision from a place of self-honor versus, I hate my father, blah, blah, blah. It was really out of self-love. And then I knew I had to heal my relationship with my brother. And so I applied all the techniques around forgiveness and everything like that to my brother, because I was like, how could he abandon me? He's my older brother, But then I was like, well, I abandoned him. I'm his baby sister. So then I went through a whole bunch of remorse, went into a lot of self-forgiveness. And then my brother and I decided to take him to court together for wrongful death. And actually, because I have a one-woman show based on my life story. And although my brother and I, so we reconciled during that time, but he's not the type that does that kind of work I do, like the spiritual side. He probably thinks I'm crazy with all that, the woo-woo.
Right.
But through doing my one-woman show about my life story and about the power of forgiveness, he was a producer in Vienna, Austria of Jewish theater, and he invited me to do my show because it had reached a level of success at his theater in Vienna, Austria. It was 2007. I still remember. And so my brother and I didn't really talk about stuff. And then here I was doing my life story on his stage, which includes him. And I still remember there was this painting of my mother in the back, and we did the Q&A together at the end. And it was this moment of art and life coming together. But I could never have spoken to him about what my life was like when he moved out or things like that. It was really incredible. So we completely reconciled.
That's beautiful. And still have a relationship today?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What was the outcome? What was the outcome of the wrongful death suit that you put against him? And what was that like to face your
good questions? Say that again.
And facing your father in court. I mean, I can't even imagine that.
Okay. Yeah. Taking my dad to court for wrongful death, I have to say, was the biggest, most empowering decision I ever made in my life. Whenever I feel less than or like I can't do something, I remember, it's making me teary right now. I remember I was able to make that decision. So I went to court knowing I had to stand up to my dad, hoping I would get an answer. It was part of the reason I took him to court, because he went to jail on a plea bargain and never took responsibility for what happened. And he didn't show up. And it was completely devastating to me, because I just didn't know that in a civil suit, the person didn't have to show up. So that was tough. That was very tough. We won a $2 million judgment. His attorney was there. We won a $2 million judgment, and he basically he skipped town with my aunt. So they sold her house, skipped town, went to Florida, where a lot of criminals do go because they protect your property and stuff like that. And we were never able to collect the money because he transferred it to offshore accounts. So
wow.
I still believe to this day I had to do it to stand up to him, because I actually didn't know how to set a healthy boundary. Did the spiritual psychology, still couldn't have the healthy boundary with him. I talked to him, I wouldn't talk to him. And then when I took him to court is when they sold the house and they moved.
Wow. And so did you ever find that closure for yourself?
I did. And that's what's in my one-woman show. So that's why I think the show is so successful. Well, first of all, forgiveness is definitely a journey, and it's not really a destination. It's a journey. But I feel so I don't feel like when I think about my dad anymore. I did a ritual. I was taking foundations class in Agape. It's a church. Michael Beckwith is the reverend there, and in the foundations class, they had us do a project, and I had a poem that came through, and it was a poem where I realized that my father and I were one, and like, if I hate any part of him, I hate a part of myself.
True. Go deeper on that for a second.
So what I realized is like, well, here's an example. In order to have a boundary with my father at the time, I would just boom, cut him out of my life. Like, I'm not going to talk to him, nothing. But he was still bouncing around in my head.
Of course.
And the other thing was, as I was cutting off to him out of anger, maybe having to set a boundary at first, I was cutting off love and receiving love from other people. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I really feel like you can only love someone or even yourself to the level that you are able to forgive others and forgive yourself. So in this class, that poem came through. And then the other thing that I listened to myself was I went and created a ritual. I went to the top of a mountain in LA. I was living in LA at the time. And I took one of my father's fedora hats, because I still had one or two of his that he had given me while everybody was alive in the family. And I read the poem, and I threw the hat over the mountain. And seriously, when I did that, something released in me. Yeah. So I think what happens in the show too is that I do that ceremony in the show, and it like, there's just the ritual the ritualistic nature of it heals people in the audience too.
So true. And I love what you're talking about, because I can't say that my father killed my mother, but I experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And I know that I have a half sister, so we share that in common. Same mom, different dad. And when my sister was 16 and I was 9, I came home from school and she was packing up her yellow VW Beetle. And I'm like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" She says, "I can't take mom anymore. I can't do it. I'm going to go live with my dad." And her dad was by all means well off, normal, didn't have psychiatric disorders. And so that was the last time I saw my sister. I was 9 years old. She drove out of the driveway. I hadn't seen her until we reunited. That was 1980, maybe 1979, 1980. I don't even remember. I didn't see her. I didn't meet her until 2005. When the internet started coming around, she found me through People Search, found out she lived a mile and a half away from me.
Oh my God.
Here in Riverside. Crazy, right? So I get on the phone with her. I'm talking to her, and I'm thinking that she's going to be successful. She's going to be happy. I'm going to remember she was a beautiful girl, and I'm like, oh, she probably had the best life. She's probably all good. And da da da. Me, I went through 4 years of homelessness. I went through tons more abuse. I had to take care of my mother even after that situation. There was a lot of stuff on me. But when I met my sister, I was mortified. Not even shocked. I was mortified that she turned out exactly like my mom. Exactly. She had a house full of cats. My mother was the crazy cat lady, 30 plus cats. My sister had 30 plus cats. That's another story. My sister had all these books in her house. My mom was incredibly smart, incredibly book smart, could have been a doctor, like practice medicine essentially with doctors. And they would say, "Where did you go to school?" That's how smart she was. People smart. She was stupid as the day is long. But ultimately my sister asked me, she goes, "Baby brother, how did you not turn out like mom?" And I said, "Because I fucking chose not to." I said, "I chose to break the generational cycle of abuse and everything else. I chose to get out of my own way. I chose to find empathy and forgiveness for her, which is something that you don't seem to have. I can't forgive mom. She put me through this and she did this and she did this," and just stuck to her story at 16 years old. Now she's in her I think she was 42 at the time when I met her. Stuck in her story, right? Couldn't find empathy and forgiveness. And I always wondered, I didn't have empathy and forgiveness for my mom at that point, but I understood her a little bit. But it wasn't until I was actually writing this book a couple years after her death. And I realized my mom used to tell me I'm 4 years old. And I'm like, "Mom, you're a fucking grown up. Start acting like it. You're not fucking 4 years old." But as I was going, I'm like, why does she keep saying that? I'm like, wait, what happened when she was 4? Oh, her parents got divorced. Oh, she grew up in a very abusive household too. She grew up in 1942 after the World War and the Great Depression and and when women were supposed to be seen and not heard and all these different things. And I thought, Brenda, I'm like, and I didn't want to say this out loud when the idea came to me, I did not want to acknowledge it, but I said, if I grew up in my mother's footsteps and I experienced all the things that she experienced and during the times that she experienced it, might I have been like her? And my answer was yes. As much as I wanted to say, no, I would have taken care of my kid. No, I would have done the right thing. No, I would have gotten rid of the cats. No, I would have been on medication. But she only could do with what she had the inputs to do, and she didn't know any better. And so she just tried to do the best she could with what she had. But when I was able to find that empathy and forgiveness for her, like you said, I was able to let like a dark piece of myself go. Like alcohol used to help me and drugs used to help me a little bit. I was always coping. I was always taping it and racing it. But when I was able to find empathy and forgiveness for her through that process, it was pretty incredible what I could do. And then ultimately, unfortunately, my sister did not change. She did not want to change. She was exactly like my mom. And for my own safety, my own security, my own everything, I wished my sister well a year later. And I said, "You know what, Maria, I hope you have a great life. I wish you all the best." I thought to myself, if I didn't share a little bit of blood with this person, would I want anything to do with her? And I said, no. And I said, "I wish you all the best. I'm glad we got to reunite, and don't ever call me again." And that was in 2006. And I haven't heard from her since. And I was able to let that go. So for you, how was that? What were some of the steps for you to find empathy and forgiveness for your dad, and also to maybe perhaps, remove maybe some guilt or shame or anything else that might've been clouding your head?
Yeah, they're really good questions. Well, with my father, there were a few things. First of all, I give thanks to that master's program I went to, that I found my way there. Someone was in acting class with me and she was in that school. And I went for an open house and I was just like, I knew I had to do that course, that 2-year course. So most of the foundational healing work that I've done was from that course. So, I started doing inner child's work with myself.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking of my dad as a child and what he was like not the personality, not the person who killed my mother, the person who grew up in the family he did. My grandfather was very sweet, but his mother My grandmother was classic, like people who raise a sociopath, like, because I studied psychology, classic.
Right.
And, I just thought about, like, I don't think anyone does things I don't, what do they say? Hurt people hurt people.
Yep.
I don't think anybody, like, if I could get out of the judgment and personalizing it. And of course, this is a process. And one thing I will say though is, you don't want to do a spiritual bypass either. And people can do that. And I did that. Like, oh, I'm just going to forgive my dad because I'm not going to bring my mother back anyway. But yet I had this seething anger underneath me. And for me, it didn't show up in alcohol, but it showed up with overeating or over shopping or over exercising. Right. It was just
Yep.
numb, numb, numb. Well, I can beat myself up over gaining weight. So I don't have to deal with the real issue that I freaking hate my father, Oh, but I love him. So confusing for me. But so some of the things were inner child's work. I think inner child's work with yourself is really important. I think also writing things down, getting it out of your head and onto the pages of your journal is really important, because I think it was like 3 years I was just thinking that I love him, I hate him, I love him, I hate him, I wish I could turn back time. I was definitely thinking of, I was wanting to take my life because I wanted to be with my mother, who I love so much. Like I was really in the past. And I remember a friend said to me, if you take your own life, doesn't mean you're going to be with your mother. I don't know. That was a wake up call for me of like, oh, I have to take responsibility for my life. And
The R word.
yeah, exactly. And she would want me to be having joy again. I don't have to stay in despair because I'm upset about this thing. So, so there was inner child's work. There was forgiveness of judgments. So literally, oh, okay. So there was getting it out of my head, writing it on the pages of my journal at night when I was really tired, and I'd wake up in the morning and like witnessing actually how big everything was and what I had lost, instead of trying to compartmentalize and just move. And I think a lot of people in life do that. They just compartmentalize, and they wonder why things aren't working, or they're not attracting loving relationships, or things just are really stuck, or why they're just not, because you can muscle your way through a lot of things, but
Oh yeah.
an emptiness or a lack of joy or a lack of peace. Those are the two things if you don't deal with this stuff. So what was the question again? It was about, compassion for him. It's like woven together right now, compassion for him and compassion for myself. I actually needed to have a lot of self-love, listen to my inner child, know that I, Brenda, at my age, could take care of my inner child before I could actually have compassion for him. And then anger, I was going to say, is actually I have a 3-step forgiveness process I developed, because I realized that the healthy release of anger was not in my process. And that's why it took me so long to forgive and to really more live up into my potential, was because I had this seething anger underneath. So I actually went to an anger workshop. I did soul retrievals. Like I did everything I could to get rid of the anger, but not to like compartmentalize, but to actually get rid of it in a healthy way. And then acting, in my one-woman show, I can be on stage acting as my father, and I can be this person. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like I can do it, but in a healthy way, instead of, doing something that would hurt me.
I love it, Brenda. I love it. You're so inspirational. When you talked about inner child work, people may be watching and listening to this. I'm very accustomed to that. What is that for people who might not know? And what are some potential first steps that they could do to acknowledge that inner child? Because I'm with you. When I coach people, when I see people who are struggling, I immediately go to who are they in the sandbox? Who were they as little boys and little girls? Because chances are they're still little boys and little girls. We're all little boys and little girls stuck in this big body, still trying to figure it the fuck out. So I applaud you for continuing to take that imperfect action. But what is it for you that that helps you, like, maybe describe what inner child work is, and some maybe the first steps that they could do aside from journaling?
How perfect. I have a picture of myself with my rabbit from when I was a little girl right here on my desk, because I feel like sometimes I need a little love. And I need to give her a little love, right? Because as adults, we have so much responsibility and, so many things to contend with. So literally get a picture of yourself up and put it near you, put it on your phone. Remind yourself that that little part of you is still alive inside. For me, it was having conversations with her and seeing, how she felt. And a lot of times if you journal, like actually when I'm working with clients too, I don't even tell them to journal. I tell them, tell them just right before you go to sleep at night, call forth your inner child so that it's integrated. It's not shoved down somewhere, because most likely that inner child could be scared. I mean, if I think about all the work I did, and this was back in like 2001, it's like I get a stuffed animal. I would just say, something like, I hear you, I see you, I love you, I am here, and I can take care of you. And what I found is, like, back then, I think I was dating a lot of emotionally vacant, not vacant, but something like that.
Yeah, emotionally unavailable.
Yeah, emotionally unavailable men. And then, like, in this work, it was like I realized it was because I was not available, because I was so like, I don't want to go back to any of this. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust myself, this and that. But I would, so like how's your inner child going to feel if that's how you're operating as an adult? So in a way, I had to grow that part up in me and set healthy boundaries with people and decide what is it that I really want. And then, like, simple things, that inner child, that inner part would tell me, she just wants to feel safe. Well, then if I'm not blaming other people, then I, as an adult, can make her feel safe. And she wanted to play. But, it's like, go to the park, go spend some time alone, do an artist date, something like that. And that was really great. Just having that communication with your inner child. It's such a beautiful, holistic way to heal and take ownership as an adult, so that you can grow that part up, right? Like you say, your mom was maybe stuck at 4 years old. Maybe your sister was stuck at 16. That's what happens. We have these traumatic events. Yep. And if we don't consciously bring that into the light to be healed, we stay stuck in these patterns, So there's the picture, there's a stuffed animal, there's a, ball that you played with, like, just a reminder that part is alive in you. And it's a wonderful part to have alive.
I'm so glad you said that. Because I have a story to share with you as well. Great. It's so funny. I didn't know what inner child work was, but I had a party. This is decades ago now, probably about 20 years ago. Let me think. Let's see, not quite 20 years ago, probably about 15 years ago, I guess. I had a party at my house, and I've been known for facial hair. I used to have long hair, and all my friends were like, I can't picture you without facial hair. Do you have any kid pictures? So I pull out the photo album. I've got about 10 or 15 of my friends there. We're drinking and smoking pot and just having a good time. And so I pull out these pictures, like, oh my God, look at you there, and look at you there. Oh my God, and having a great time. Everybody left. I'm cleaning up. I'm sitting outside, cleaning up the table out in my patio. And I pick up a picture of me, and I'm probably first or second grade. And I pick up the picture, and I'm going to put it away. And I get chills every time I tell this story, because I could totally remember it. I pick up the picture, having no idea what I'm going to do. I'm just picking up the picture, and I look at the picture, and I look at that little kid, and I go, holy shit, dude. And I start to have this conversation out loud. And I've had a lot of people do this, so I'm glad you said that. I'm like, dude, you're going to go through so much hell in your fucking life, dude. You're going to see so many things. They're going to blow your mind. You're going to be a witness to stuff that's going to make you, want to throw up. You're going to have so many people wrong you. You're going to be at your wit's end. You're going to want to kill yourself. You're going to try to kill yourself. You're going to do all these things, but you're going to turn it around, dude. You're going to pick it up. You're going to figure it out. You're going to take that imperfect action. You're going to suffer and you're going to struggle, but you're going to overcome. You're going to get your master's degree. You're going to buy a house. You're going to have a successful corporate career. You're going to do all these things. But right now, where you're at, you're suffering, you're struggling, but I promise you're going to get through it. And I remember I was crying. I was drunk, but I was also crying. I was just like, wow, just looking at that little boy and looking what he went through. And that's one of the reasons why I got these tattoos. But it says, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. I got that in 2016 when I was going through a dark time. And I'm like, I've always said every day is a new day, and what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I started developing the mindset. I'm like, everything that has happened in my life is really caused me to take that responsibility to sit there and say, I could be a victim, or I can be a victor, which some people say is cliche, but it's absolutely fucking true. You can either sit there and whine, bitch, piss, and moan about, this is why I'm this way. This is why I'm fat. This is why I'm unemployed. This is why I'm on medication. This is why I'm a diabetic, because my family gave me sugar. All that. You could do that, and you can die with regrets, or you could stand the fuck up and say, hey, listen, I'm not going to do that anymore. And coincidentally, a few years later, when my mom passed away, I was there holding her hand, and I got to be there for her. I got to tell her, Mom, you need to relax. It's okay. Wow. And afterwards, I went to a therapist. I went to like 3 different therapists because I knew I needed to talk about it. I knew that I was going to have some bottled up situations, and I wanted to process that. And this therapist I went to 3 times, she wasn't doing me any good. I was ready to quit. And I went in one time, and she asked me a question that correlates to that picture. She said, Chris, when did you stop being a kid? And I was like, I said, that's a very good question. I don't know if I was ever a kid. I said, I'm going to say about 9 years old. I said 9, that's where shit really started getting serious. I started getting bullied at school. I was getting my ass beat at school. I was getting my ass beat on the street I lived on. I was getting my ass beat by my mom. I had all these responsibilities and these chores, and she was going through tough times, and I had to start washing cars. And she goes, I need you to reconnect with your kid. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she goes, do you ever like play? And I said, this was before my son was born. And I said, you know what? I said, I don't. She goes, I need you to find ways to play. So I bought a coloring book because I used to like to color. So I bought a swear word coloring book. It's pretty fun. It's sitting right over there. I have a couple of them, which is really cool. And I'm like, okay. And then I started processing. I'm like, oh, I feel guilty if I play without earning the right to play, because when we were growing up, it was always work, 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 do, be. And I was like, okay, I have these feelings of guilt if I do those things. So it caused me to really reevaluate my entire life. And that's where I came to the conclusion, like everything that has happened in my life has prepared me for what I'm dealing with today. What are your thoughts on that? When I say that what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, I get people sometimes pushing back on that, saying, no, it's bullshit, Chris. But what are your thoughts on that, Brenda?
Really?
Yeah, I get people pushing me back on that. Like the other part of it is I say everything happens for a reason. And that's where people have like, well, why is the reason why kids are molested? Why is the reason, blah, blah, blah.
I know, I actually have, because I do believe that everything happens for a reason, but I also don't have clarity on that, because I know when I was studying church religious science, that was one of the things they talked about. And I still never really got clarity on, yes, why are kids molested and stuff like that. And yet I would say, at least for me, it empowers me to think like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the bottom line. What empowers you? Does it empower you to think, no, it's a chaotic universe and you just don't know what the fuck's going to happen? Or does it empower you to be like, well, everything happens for a reason? I feel like when I say everything happens for a reason, then I can take that responsibility. The good news is when you take the responsibility and you're out of blame, you actually have the power to change things. Because if you're blaming someone else and waiting for them to take responsibility, you're living in you're going to have a hard life. Because and I say that because like I lived so many years in wanting my father to take responsibility and thinking, well, he's just going to tell the truth and this and he's going to take he's going to show remorse and God, when I realized that he had sociopathic tendencies and was a narcissist, and I don't like to label necessarily, except it's easier to understand.
True. I'm the same way.
When I realized that he was a narcissist, it was like the lights went on for me. And I was like, I keep trying to get him to see things how I do, but he can't. So why am I wasting all that time and energy? And that was really pivotal in my healing and my life and my joy coming back, because I could stop trying to get something from someone that it's not even a matter of changing their mind. It's like he couldn't see it. And then of course, looking at it years later, I'm like, oh my God, why would he tell me what happened? Is that going to make anything better? No. Like, it's so funny how we can be just innocent, expecting someone to be like us, think like us. So I feel like for me, I even take it to, I chose my parents. So that helps me. And what it helps me for is that I realize the lessons I got. Look, I teach on forgiveness. I've impacted so many thousands of people that I wouldn't have if this didn't happen. Well, maybe I'm a soul that could do it. And that's why I chose these parents. But I also look at what the good things were, they were, huge personalities, charismatic. They were very sensual. And my mom was so creative. Like I get to tap into some of these things that they had that were really good. And then I get to look at the lessons. When I was doing my show, I don't know, maybe the third time I performed my show, fourth time I performed my show. So I have about the forgiving my father, but then all of a sudden I realized, because we're ever evolving, that I need to forgive my mother, right? And sometimes when the parent leaves, or there's the good parent, you forget that there's judgments about them, and maybe things weren't always so wonderful between them. And I realized that I was very, very close with my mom, but I realized that I really had to forgive her for whatever reason, her low self-esteem, the way she was brought up, but for the model she set for me of how it was okay to be mistreated by someone who says they love you. And I performed that in the show, and I was doing a Q&A afterwards, and this woman was in the audience, and she's like, why would you have to forgive your mother? Like, that's ridiculous. But you could see on this woman's face, like, this anger she lives with of that black and white thinking and victim and bully, and her being a victim to it, which, you know, if it helps you, great. But in my experience, because I've lived in the victim mode too, doesn't help. You attract what you are. So you get low level people with you, low vibe people with you, and you don't get out of the muck, you know? So it's like, what will make your life better, you know?
It's true. I mean, it's about putting yourself out of the situation and thinking about how you ultimately want to live your life. You know, do you want to live your life in that sorrow and that regret and that shame and that blame and everything else? How do you expect to find love? People sit there and come to me as for coaching, and they're like, I'm looking for a relationship. I want love. And I find out that they're doing anything but loving themselves or loving anybody else around them. But they have this expectation, this hope that somebody's going to come from somewhere and shower them with love and replace all the feelings and emotions they never got as kids. And I think that's one of the big things that fucks up relationships, is because tendencies are that we marry our mothers and we marry our fathers. In general speak, we think, oh, it's going to change with this person. I've been with relationships with women who I've tried to fix and tried to help, and like, oh my God, if I can help this person, then maybe somehow I can help my mom with this. And it's not even the case. It's the fact of what you and I are speaking about, is the fact that you and I have taken responsibility to sit there and say, what can I do? And we've sought out that professional help. We've sought out that additional experience. I mean, that's one of the reasons how I got into coaching, was while I was trying to help my mom get her head out of her ass about things, and then ultimately found out I had a gift for helping people change their perspectives about their lives. I know that people are wondering this. I know the answer to this, but where is your dad now? And what are your thoughts and feelings about him at this point in your life?
My dad is deceased. He died probably in 2004.
There's a little thought that he might be homeless living somewhere.
Wasn't enough. Well, we had just transferred the case from the legal case, the $2 million, a civil judgment, from New York to Florida, where he was living. And so that means we were closer to collecting the judgment when I got a letter that he had died a month before. So that's why at first I was like, he's probably just trying to escape the judgment, because that's, you know, my dad definitely had a criminal mind. And but I do actually feel like he died. And
how did that make you feel when you acknowledge that?
Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough, because here I had done so many years. He died in 2004, but I had done several years of healing, right? I had even put up my one woman show the first time, and I had done all this healing, and then he died. And I realized that my inner child still had this dream that he'd come back and take responsibility. It's not logical, but I grieved pretty hard. And I remember I had a friend like a year later who's like, oh, I never, sent condolences, because I was like, that's your father. Look what he did. So it's so personal, right? Though, because it was still my father. But it was extremely healing, because it was like, oh, I can actually put that to rest now. He's not coming back. That like dream of that happening is never going to happen. So it was really, really healing for me. I did speak to one of my cousins about a year ago, and we think we're so healed and everything. And it was one of my aunt's sons.
Okay.
Who I hadn't really spoken to that side of the family either for a while. And he decided to tell me that he thought I might want to know how happy my father, like how not happy, but how my father really had a good life those last few years. That, he knew everybody in the synagogue. And it kind of just, it really, I mean, I was so shocked he told me this. And I didn't tell him at the time. I don't want to fucking know what he had a good time erasing me from his life, right? Because when he died, I wasn't invited to the funeral, and now all of a sudden I understood why. Because it was like me and my mother and my brother didn't exist, right? But when I can get the witness there, I'm like, well, of course he did that, because to go on, what is he going to meet new people and say, well, I killed my wife and I went to jail for it, and I had a daughter I was very close with, but I don't talk to anyone, So like, if you can get out of it, like in a psychological experiment, I understand that. But at the time when my cousin said that, he said it probably because my father and I were really close together, but it really hurt. I was like, wow. And then he said that he wanted to invite me to the funeral all those years before, but that my aunt had said no. Well, of course, because then their social standing and everything else would have been challenged. But yeah, so it's like, just be kind to yourself. It's like I was kind to myself when I realized that. Like, I didn't in the moment tell my cousin, why the hell would you tell me this? I just went, okay, well, now that I got this information, let me be like, okay. Because there was always a part of me that I still did love my father. I did, it's like, I don't want to be that person who hates, even though there are plenty of people that will jump on the bandwagon and say, like, for you had a horrible mother. Why would you do that? Why would you be with her? How could you have any compassion for your father? But, so I guess as his daughter, it hurt. But I was okay because of all the work I've done.
Beautiful, beautiful. This is such an impactful conversation. I didn't even know this question was going to come up, but how did you ever have a relationship with your aunt again?
The short answer is no. I'm very close with my mom's other sister.
Okay.
She was like, thank God for her. And she doesn't talk to that aunt. So basically, when the judgment came up, like, I did go visit there a couple of times before, was it before or after he got out of prison? And then when I took him to court, that's when they sold the house and they disappeared. And here's what I did. I did what I tell all of my clients not to do. I compartmentalized. I tell my clients, look, even if someone's out, they've passed on or they've moved away, if you still have stuff, that, you're still angry and stuff, you really want to release that because you have a lack of an ability to attract more love in your life. That's, or more good or more fun. And then I went and compartmentalized, like, she's out of state. Who the hell cares? My father is gone now. And then in, this, I think it was about 2018 or something like that. I still remember I was driving from LA to San Diego or something like that. And my aunt, who I'm close with, I joke because I don't talk about her much. I say she's like the good witch in the Wizard of Oz versus the bad witch. She calls me to say that she found out that her sister died. My aunt died, who married my father. And I went, whatever. Okay, see ya. Basically. and people have called me like the Queen of Forgiveness. That's what the Queen of Forgiveness is.
It's understandable. It's understandable. You get a pass on that one. I mean, we're human beings, right?
I guess so.
We can secretly go, I'm pretty happy about that.
I just have the witness that comes in is like, really, Brenda. So, but what happened right after was so amazing because I was driving and all of a sudden, and I was very close with my mother, I feel my mom's presence. And it's like I see my mother welcoming her sister to the other side, just with love, just loving her.
Yeah.
I just started bawling and I started crying and I did what I knew not to do. Right. So intellectually we can know things and still not have the healing. Years before, I had let go of my anger that my mother had toward my father when she was alive, because I was like, well, I can't take that on. That's crazy. I'm his daughter, not her. But I somehow took on how angry I should be at my aunt because she did that betrayal, instead of then seeing my mother's, on the other side being like, come on, come. I was like, wow, I can just let this go and I can forgive my aunt now. So that's that.
Brenda. So what are you doing now? You keep mentioning clients. Who do you serve? What do you do? What got you into this? And how can other people like connect with you? Because I definitely want people to be able to reach out to you and get this healing and get this trauma out of their way so they can truly live their life. So who do you serve and how do you do that?
Thank you. So I first started teaching on forgiveness and coaching on forgiveness. And I do have a program called Phoenix Rising. People can reach out to me about that and I can tell you more about that. And I do have a book. But I've been now for probably 10 years serving. First, I was serving other performers and creatives who wanted to do a one-person show like mine because I've performed worldwide and had a lot of success with it. And then I was going to all these like networking groups and stuff. And so coaching colleagues would be like terrified of like, how do I share my story and wanting to be really impactful on stage. And the same thing then happened with video, that they were like, how am I on video? And so I started teaching, and now about 80% of my clients are entrepreneurs, 20 are performers. Teach them how to tell a really impactful story, either on stage or on video or on interviews, so how they can weave that through based on their message. And so I have digital courses, I have live trainings, and you know, before the pandemic, I had in-person workshops, so maybe I'll do that again. Yeah. And that is my main site, forgivenessandfreedom.com. But I'm also very active on Facebook. And I also have a free Facebook group called Unforgettable Speakers Society, because I really am passionate. I'm passionate about the healing from your story. Like that trumps everything for me. But then once you get to inhabit the characters and look at them in this new way and then share it, you get to help other people, but without like the emotions being too much or overcoming you or feeling bad when you're telling story or not making sense. I noticed a lot of entrepreneurs, their stories weren't landing because they were being vulnerable, but they hadn't really worked on it. So that's why I do what I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brenda Adelman, I am in awe. I'm so glad we had this conversation. You're also on social media. Tell everybody where you're at on social medias.
Yes, Facebook is the main one, although I just started doing TikTok and some stuff on Instagram. So that's Brenda Adelman. And then, like I said, I have a free group that you want to get into if you're interested in telling your story. I do a lot of free challenges and stuff like that. And that's Unforgettable Speakers Society.
Let me put this link in the messaging. I think if I can do it, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. You sent me something they can get a free gift, the top 20 speaker tips for entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Great.
And just Brenda, it's been an amazing conversation. I could talk to you for hours. Thank you for being the person that you are. Thank you for lighting the world up. Thank you for going through those experiences and choosing to be a victor out of it. Thank you for spreading the beautiful love that you do. And I look forward to more conversations with you. I'm going to put you backstage here for a second. Don't go anywhere because I want to continue the show. And then I just want to have a little chat with you before we end everything else. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Brenda Adelman. I mean, Jesus. I mean, just for you guys that may not know how to spell that, of course, it's Brenda, Brenda, and the last name is Adelman. So Brenda Adelman, if you're listening to us on a podcast, you'll find all that information in the show notes. But I just really want to take this opportunity to reframe and recap what it is that we talked here about tonight. We talked about the R word, the responsibility. Each of you watching this and listening to this have the opportunity. You have the opportunity right here and right now to say, how is my thinking working for me? Is it working for me? Is it working against me? How are my actions? Are they working for me or against me? How about my addictions? How about my short-term gratifications? Are the things that I'm doing and saying to myself, are they supportive of somebody who is healing or somebody who is in still trauma? We've talked about this. Both Brenda and I talked about the fact that we have sought out those experts. We have sought out the information. Is it easy? Fuck no. No, it's not easy. And as you can tell from what she said, it's an ongoing process. But what I would rather be on that ongoing process, I'd rather get on the train and start to see the scenery rather than stay put and regret that later on. And that's the responsibility we have to take upon ourselves. We're never going to get the closure that we fully expect. Some of us might. I got a little bit of closure before my mom passed away, and I was very grateful for that. But sometimes we don't get that closure, and we have to create that for ourselves. And that starts with that self-healing. So here, I'm going to give you something that's super easy that you can start to implement in your life. And I promise you, in 6 weeks, you will be a different person. You will feel differently. Number one, hydration. Drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So many people are walking around right now dehydrated. Guess what? Your body's like 70 or 80% water. If you're not drinking water, you're not feeling your best. You have brain fog. You feel like shit. You want to lay down. You want to go to your short-term gratifications because you don't feel good. Guess what? All that ripple effects, they go down. And then later on, you get diabetes. Later on, you get high blood pressure. You're on cholesterol medication. You feel like shit even worse. It spirals. But when you hydrate yourself, guess what? You feel a little bit better. You're getting a little bit more sleep. Your skin looks a little bit better. Next thing is nutrition. I'm not asking you to fucking eat like a saint, but 5 days a week, can you eat some vegetables and some fruits and stay away from the sugar and stay away from the gluten? Guess what? When you do that, the inflammation in your body goes down. You start to feel a little bit better. You don't have the sugar crashes. You don't have the insulin surges in your body. You feel a little bit better. You start making better decisions because you're making those better things. You're serving your soul. Next thing is sleep. I wear an Oura ring. OARA. It's a sleep ring. And every night I get my sleep and I wake up in the morning. And I look at the outcome of my sleep. Did I get deep sleep, the restorative sleep? Did I have REM sleep? Did I go in and out of my sleep cycles properly? If I didn't, what did I do before I went to bed? Sleep is massively important. You need that deep restorative sleep. If you're drinking alcohol before you go to bed, you're sleeping, and you probably say, oh, I sleep great when I drink because I used to be that guy. I was that guy. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, when you start analyzing your sleep and going, wait, when I get deep sleep, when I get an hour or two of deep sleep, man, I wake up feeling a lot better than when I don't. And then you're feeling better, you're making better decisions. It all builds upon itself. The other thing is exercise. For God fucking sakes, get out and take a walk for 30 minutes. Move your body. Get out and get some oxygen. Expel the carbon monoxide out of your system. If you're a shallow breather like I am most of the time, guess what? That stays in your system. When you have oxygen running through your cells, you start to feel better. You do better. So you got the hydration, you got the nutrition, you got the exercise, you got the sleep. Get outside and get some vitamin D, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not getting sunshine on your face, and I've found recently that doesn't necessarily work. I have a friend of mine that gets 45 minutes of sun every day. He went and had a vitamin deficiency test done, and he found he was vitamin D deficient. He looked at his doctor and says, what the fuck, man? I get 45 minutes of Arizona sun every single day. If you're lacking vitamin D, guess what? You can find yourself depressed. I found that I take a vitamin D3 supplement. And when I forget, when I go on a period like, I need to order it, I start finding myself in a funk. You need these things. You need to take that responsibility to take care of yourself first and foremost. You need to love yourself first and foremost. The other thing you need to do is you need to eliminate toxic people from your life. The people that drag you down, the people that always complain, the people that want to have you stay stuck because misery loves company. And sometimes you need to take out a pad of paper. I'm a big fan of writing shit down. Write down the 5 people you hang around the most. And are they pushing you to become the best version of yourself? Are they pushing you to get out of your comfort zone? Are they pushing you to take chances and risks? Or are they saying, you know what, you should stay in that job because you get a good paycheck and that's really good. And you should be thankful for that. When you're fucking miserable going to work every single day and it's killing your insides because you go home and you drink and you eat and you do all those things to escape the fact that you're in a shitty job. Stop tolerating stuff, ladies and gentlemen. That's the crux of this conversation. Stop tolerating the bullshit from yourself. Stop tolerating the bullshit from others. Find ways to release that anger and find that forgiveness that like Brenda talked about tonight. Go back and watch the show again. If you came in halfway through the show, go back and watch it from the beginning and take some notes. Like I said before, I want you to walk away with 3 to 5 strategies of things that you're going to implement and give it 6 weeks. Give it fucking 6 months. Don't sit there and, I tried to eat good for a week and it didn't do anything. Well, fuck, it's not going to do anything because you need time. It's taking you 30 years. It's taking you 40 years. It's taking you 20 years. However old you are, it's taking you that long to get to this spot. How about this? I'm going to commit to this for 6 months at a time. Each 6 months, I'm going to change my program. I'm going to level up. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to do more. I'm going to get around the right people. I'm going to get a coach. I'm not going to have any excuses anymore. I'm not going to have the tolerations in my life. Guess what? In 3 years' time, you could look back and go, fuck, that was a horrible time in my life, but now I'm in such a better place. 3 years. Oh my God, Chris, 3 years is so long. I need immediate responses now. I want Amazon. I want microwave, everything else. It's not going to fucking happen, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. When you grow through this stuff, you grow through it, right? And you become the strong, independent people like myself and Brenda. Is it easy? Is it perfect? Is it 100% reliable all the time? No. There are still moments in my life where I find myself thinking things. I'm like, where did that thought come from? And now I have a way of sitting there going, wow, that was really interesting. I don't care to entertain that. That's not a part of who I am anymore. I am this person now and I'm happy and I'm going to focus on those things. I'm going to do the things that support love. I'm going to support the things that make this world a better place. I'm going to support the things that allow me to be healthy and happy and to spread that joy for you guys watching this podcast and listening to this podcast, for the people that watch my YouTube channel, for the people that are going to read my book. Every single day and every single way, I have a huge why. And that why is to fight for what's right and what's fair, to risk for which that mattered, and to leave this earth a better place for who I am and what I do. That's because I wrote my eulogy, ladies and gentlemen. Think with the end in mind. Do your work. Make the sacrifices. Have the discipline. Ditch the excuses. Ditch the toxic people. And I promise you, you will have an amazing kick-ass life. I'm Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses Coach. Make sure you go to noexcusescoach.com. Check out my group accountability coaching program. It's on fire right now. I appreciate you guys that are in it. It's my way of serving you at a super affordable price, because without accountability, you're not getting shit done. I can promise you that. So if anything I could do, please reach out to me. I love you guys. We'll be back here next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Raw and Unscripted show. Go out there, be beautiful. I love you guys.